Hubert Hageman, and then talking for myself, and at the thinking outside of the box on this tax situation. What happens if we would go away from so much reliance on property tax and go more on income tax or consumption tax?
Assumption tax?
Consumption.
Consumption tax. Yeah. I think there should be an honest discussion of what property tax should pay for. Iowa is one of maybe a couple states that actually imposes mental health is paid for by property taxes. I actually offered legislation 2-3 years ago that would have done away with that. That's the concept, I think, is you have to look at what should be done with property tax monies and what shouldn't be done with property tax monies. I tend to agree with a consumption type tax as opposed to penalizing folks that are entrepreneurial and go out and create the jobs and create the wealth in this country. So I tend not to want to discourage that activity, and I think a severely progressive income tax discourages that. And so I am more on the side of I would prefer that we fund things with a consumption or sales tax if you want or not. But I don't see, Hubert, I don't see that happening tomorrow morning. That might be a long-term discussion that we're going to have before that's going to occur. The property tax thing is an interesting scenario, and I'm sure most of you know, but if you go out and put $250,000 in a commercial building, or $250,000 in your home, or $250,000 in ag land, you know that there are significant differences in the tax you pay for the same investment. So I think we need to take a look at commercial property tax in this state. And whether we have it done right or not, I think is open for discussion with the governor's proposal.
This is some of the small towns' problem, well, in all towns, especially in small towns, with who wants to have a building in their retirement portfolio. So it's tough.
Is. I mean, it absolutely is. There have been times that I'm aware of in my community where we have a commercial building that might have sold for the neighborhood of $10,000 had a $3,000 to $4,000 annual tax bill against it.
You know, when you look at it, it's very difficult. It still takes so many dollars to run a state, county, city, and what you try to do is get the dollars you need as fairly as possible for everybody that lives in it. And that's what it takes, a lot of balancing act and a lot of studying to just make moves. So it's interesting thoughts.
Well,
it's grabbing them as equal as possible.
I mean, I'm in favor of reducing costs of government, and the thing I use is in private sector, the technology has been adapted, and we've driven efficiencies, whether it be agriculture or small business. We've driven efficiencies into our operation like crazy. In government, if you adopt technology, about what you do is go out and form another department. And that just hasn't worked at the state level. I know some of the local governments are improving their efficiencies, and that's where we need to do to drive down the cost of government, and that'll impact taxes.
I just wanted to put in my own plug for a consumption tax, because if a smart consumption tax was worked up, you could do away with the IRS. April 15th becomes just another day. It taxes, when you think about it, it taxes people who make their money from illegal activities, because they don't pay tax when they make a profit selling drugs, but they would when they buy new cars and new jewelry. Like he said, it doesn't punish people who save, it punishes people who spend. My own daughter's in college right now. Last year we qualified for financial aid, and we worked as many hours as we could find, and now we make just a little bit too much money. Now we don't qualify for financial aid because we work so hard. Under consumption tax, probably would, because we haven't spent anything. You know, everything's going to for education. So those are some things to consider about a consumption tax.
Yeah, the college thing always amazes me, because students who actually work get penalized for working. Somehow that just doesn't compute with me, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have a student who works, and saves, and it comes time to go to college, they shake their head and say, you either earn too much or you save too much and you're not eligible for this. We're going to give it to somebody who spent every darn dime they had and then some, and doesn't have anything. Now, somehow that's wrong, but that is our system as we have it today.
Do we have any more questions?
In the area of a school issue on tax, there's the physical plant and equipment levy that boards can levy, the 33-cent basic tax, and there's some discussion about changing the usage of that. Have you heard anything about that? Right now it can be used for equipment and technology, and to just use it for general fund purposes. Has that come up any? And if so, how would you both feel about that?
On the House side, it hasn't come up. So far, all we're looking at is, you know, we want to reduce, we want to cut. But as far as how to rebuild back, there has been no talk whatsoever on the House side of it. I haven't seen any bills reflecting to it at all. And so when you talk about, is that money going to be used for operationals?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and that gets into...
It's a way to increase the general fund without allowing growth coming down, but it's all property tax.
Right.
This is the first year that this is sidelined. I own a home for, you talk about people that run for legislature and say they're not going to raise taxes. I've owned a home for so many years. This is the first year my property tax on a moderate home exceeded $2,000. Every year it's gone up. So the people, the things that you guys are doing in Des Moines does increase taxes. And Senator Grosstow, he can't sit there and say, I didn't run to raise taxes. What he's doing in Des Moines is raising taxes. It's just the property taxes that are going up. So,
and that's where I mentioned we got to be very careful what we do for reaction in Des Moines. It just doesn't pass it down to the
that's
state.
right.
And the county.
This is another issue, and you're going to hear about it. So we'll take this away. We'll take the general fund money away from the state, put it on the local property tax in the form of a physical plant and equipment levy. You can fuel your buses. You can repair the buildings, pay salaries or whatever. So I guess I'd be cautious on that. But it's one option, I guess, but I'd be cautious on how that moves.
Vern, I have not heard that discussion with regard to the physical plant and equipment levy. I have heard that discussion with regard to that formerly 1 cent local option tax. I have heard the discussion about loosening up how that money can be spent. It was supposed to be spent for infrastructure type things, and it has also gradually loosened up. And
that's horrible consumption. Sales tax.
It is.
Property tax.
It is, but as far as the loosening up,
right.
I've heard it discussed with that. The other thing that I've heard with regard to the schools is there are several mandates of how you got to have a school nurse, you got to have school library, and I'm not sure, differing things in there. There's some discussion about removing those to allow the schools to have more flexibility in the way the current money they receive can be spent. Those are the general discussions I've heard in that.
But with that right now, like I say, it's in the tear down mode, and we got to start seeing what they're going to build back.
There is a number for a bill.
On the physical plant? Okay.
It might be in the committee that if we don't see it for a while.
We have another question.